My talk today is on my journey to the northeast region of India. Before I come to what my title of my talk is, which is Changing the Gaze, I want to talk a little about what I actually do. Now, many of you may have read my articles, many of you may have seen my reports, some of you may have even followed my fieldwork in the region. But I think a lot of you have seen me on TV, and I feel that the media has labeled me by different names. I'm seen as an anthropologist, I'm seen as a theologian, I'm seen as a political analyst, but I'm also seen as a scholar of the Northeast. But if you were to ask me, what is it that I do, above all these labels, I would like to say that I am an eternal observer. I observe everything. I observe changes, momentum, glitches, activity. But over and above observing all of this, I think what I do is I observe not just from the inside, but I observe from the outside. I don't just observe from the outside, but I also observe from the inside. Therefore, this is the title of my talk today, Changing the Gaze, a 15-year journey of an insider in the northeast region of India. Now, if you have seen the map of the northeast region, it is possibly the most terrible imagination of what a geography should look like. The entire region in the northeast is connected to the rest of the country by just a 21-kilometer mass of land. This, unfortunately, was one of the worst colonial legacies that was left to us. I feel, of course there are many other reasons, but I feel this was possibly one of the single biggest reasons for not just the geographical alienation of this region, but also the psychological alienation of this region. Of course, the colonial influence, not just on our country, but also in the Northeast, left us with a lot of complex issues. And in the Northeast, it left us with very complex issues like border disputes, insurgency, separatist movement, ethnic identity issues, amongst many, many other issues. The Northeast that we see today is completely different. And I can say this because I've been traveling there for a really long time. With the advancement of infrastructure, with the advancement of interconnectivity, the Northeast once again has become a part of our mainstream consciousness, which is, if you might remember, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we didn't hear a lot about it. But today, we talk about it, it's become mainstream, and because I've been traveling to this region for a really long time, I can tell you that the perception has changed because of this. Because it has become accessible, we look at the Northeast differently. When I started traveling there, the perception was that it's a very dangerous area. It is very alien. It is very distant. It is very diverse. It is something that's almost not like us. This region was perceived by its conflict. It was judged by its conflict. And it was judged by the fact that people called it indigenous, tribal. Indigenous, tribal, these are words that don't exist in our civilizational dictionary. What does indigenous mean? This is a dividing terminology again. This is a legacy of the colonial influence that we had on our country. Indigenous is a divisive word. It means that you belong here, but I don't belong here. Of course, when I looked at the Northeast and I was very young then, I said, well, this is only a question about perception. And perceptions can be changed. If you start exploring it more, there aren't enough eyes on the Northeast. We aren't researching the Northeast. We aren't going in there. We aren't traveling there. There's no tourism there. So I thought if we explored it, that would happen, but nobody was going there. We weren't studying, we didn't have researchers, we didn't have great institutions. So I decided to explore it. I started going to the Northeast for my first really long-term fieldwork research in 2008. And that is when I was encountered by a lot of gazes. And these are the gazes that I'm going to talk about today. These are the gazes that I was confronted with. These also were the gazes that I challenged. Prior to me going to the Northeast, I had studied many years in England. I had come back from England armed with degrees in anthropology, armed with degrees in theology, because I was always fascinated by the tribal culture. I was always fascinated by the Northeast, and these were the tools I needed to effectively study this area. So I came back and I said, I'm well equipped and I'm going to go in. Surprisingly, and it came as a surprise to me, and I don't know, I'm sure it'll come as a surprise to you. When I came back, people said, so you want to go to the Northeast, you studied anthropology? What is this anthropology? Is it like archaeology? They said, what is theology? Is it zoology? What have you studied and come back? And of all the places you want to go to the Northeast, it took me by surprise, because as far as I'm concerned, all geographical areas, every part of my country is open to me to visit, to study, to explore. But of course, bless them, simple minds, they thought, maybe this is a very difficult area to work in. Or they thought maybe she's slightly different. She's a little bit adventurous. For the life of me, I don't understand why you need to be adventurous to do research and fieldwork, which is the basis of any subject that you study. I believe there are a lot of management students here. And you might be placed in areas that is not natural to you. You might be placed in remote areas. You might be placed in areas that are not urban cities. You will have to know about it. That is research. You will have to amalgamate yourself in the culture of that area. That is research. That is fieldwork. However, I was also faced with a lot of difficult questions, because I realized society likes to box you. And maybe as young students, you've also seen this, that there are predetermined boxes. You need to fit yourself into one of these boxes, and if you don't, there's a little bit of like consciousness. People will say, but kya karoge? What will you do? Where are you going to go from here? What is your paycheck going to be? Are you a bit strange? There are all these suspicious questions that are put towards you. It's very insidious in a way. Eventually also what comes down to it is, are you going to be paid a lot to do this? Right? But that wasn't really an agenda that I was following. I was following knowledge for the pursuit of knowledge. And the questions that I was asked, and forgive me if this might be jarring to a lot of you, were questions like, where is the Northeast? What happens in the Northeast? I believe wahan to, there are only bombs and conflict and insurgents. What do they eat there? What are you going to eat there? Do they eat dogs there? This was a general standard of questioning that I was faced with. I was even faced with questions that said, but aren't they Chinese? This is the level of knowledge that we have about this region. And of course, like I said, things have changed. But this wasn't what it was like even a decade ago. You're probably seeing the Northeast on a rise today, but this was not the case. And that pretty much was the first case that I encountered. That was the first case that I challenged. Because I realized the value of research and fieldwork in this country is zero. We don't know where it fits in. We don't know what it is about. We don't know what it's going to pay us, without realizing that that is probably the most important part of any subject, any career that you will take up. But we don't really have that for it. Anyhow, I was also very young. I was very young, like all of you. So I went there, very idealistic. I went into the region, only to be slapped on my face by the reality of the situation. It was difficult. It wasn't easy. Interconnectivity was bad. Travel was difficult. There weren't, air connectivity was something that you could really just dream of. Of course, Guwahati and all were connected, but I was going there to study the complexities of the region, which means I needed to go into the nooks and corner. I needed to go into the hotbeds of insurgency. I needed to go into areas that possibly had never seen anybody from my geographical background and descent that had entered these places. The biggest reality that I faced was not traveling to a city like Guwahati or traveling to Imphal. The reality was traveling to the interiors. I traveled to these places because there was no other way to go by local transportation. Now imagine coming back from wherever you studied and you live in urban cities, and here you are on your first really long research trip, sitting in a 70-hour bus journey. This was not a comfortable bus. There's no such thing as luxury buses. These were buses with steel, seating. It was so cramped that for 17 hours there was no question of movement. When the journey came to an end, I decided, well, I didn't decide, but I had to get off, but I couldn't because my knees were done. The excruciating pain that I went through did not last for days, it didn't last for months, it lasted for years. Another time I decided that I had to go to far-flung places like Changlang and Tira in the interiors of the Arunachal Pradesh. I had to go to places like Haflong in Assam. These were hotbeds of insurgent conflict. When we used to travel by buses, we'd have insurgents come in and check us out. They would ask us questions as to why are you going there, because I was identifiable. I didn't look like one of them, So I was identifiable, and they'd ask me because nobody had ever traveled to these places, in which itself it was shocking to me that we don't travel. We travel to Rajasthan, we travel to the Coorg, but we've missed out an entire region. They haven't seen people like us. It was flabbergasting. Anyhow, I remember being on a train journey. It was an overnight train journey, and I said, okay, I've had enough of this bus and all. I am going to travel by first-class compartment because I deserve some comfort. Only to realize that when you're on an overnight journey in a train, first-class compartment might not be very good. It puts you in danger because you're isolated. A field worker, a researcher, anybody traveling to the interiors, traveling alone, should travel in general compartments because you're surrounded by people. These were basic lessons I learned on my fieldwork. These were lessons that were going to hold me in good stead for the rest of my life. These were lessons that I think all of us as life skills must know, and I say this particularly to women. Women are going to, in the future, be put in positions of competition, be put in positions of power. You will have to show your mettle. And that mettle doesn't just come with strength of mind. It comes with your general understanding of what keeps you safe, what keeps you secure, and what's the best way to move forward. Anyhow, I also, in these travels, traveled to many insurgent areas and interviewed insurgents. I interviewed victims. I interviewed remote tribal populations. How did I do that? Can you do that? Will they give you access? Will they give you an interview? No. You build trust. You spend time. You give the best years of your life doing this. You do it in discomfort, but you enjoy it. Why do you enjoy it? Because it is single-minded pursuit of knowledge. It is not money that drives you. It is not personal ambition that drives you. But it is something bigger than that. And these are life lessons, these are experiences I interviewed all these people, and I was welcomed over a period of time with open arms. It was very nice. But one of the basic things that I realized that it wasn't just about me building trust. It was about that these people are really smart. We have this habit of assuming that because we come from urban cities, we know everything. That we've seen the world, we've traveled abroad, we are smart, we have all these, life experiences. But it's human nature to be able to pick up on earnestness. And if you go in with the pursuit of knowledge, that earnestness is picked up. Urbanization does not make you smart. When you travel to these places, you respect their knowledge, you respect their frameworks, you observe that. And that is what brings you together. Now, I also started traveling, doing research, putting papers together, and I was really surprised that more and more as I got to know people, the local population accepted me. They loved the fact that I was coming to their region, and they loved the fact that I was, working with them or interested in them, because nobody had ever come in. And these are 7 distinct states. We call it a region, but these are 7 distinct states with their own character, with their own languages, with their own tribal cultures that are absolutely wonderful, but also have very deep-seated characteristics that we need to understand. When I went to these places, they were happy to have me. I was not seen as an outsider, but I was seen as an outsider by the urban academia in the region. I was seen as an outsider by the urban intelligentsia. The first thing that they used to tell me is, Ari, you're not from here. You will not understand our situation. You are not from here, you cannot gauge it. You will not be effective. Why have you come to the Northeast? Only we can understand this. Now, from the first case that I encountered, which was before I went into the Northeast, where people were wondering, why am I going here? Why am I, putting myself at risk? And what are the returns for this? And the second question that I got by the insiders, who said the same thing. To me, it was a substandard question. That why have you come to the Northeast? I belong to this country, I'm a part of this country. I can possibly go anywhere I want. But the question was the same. Why have you come? You're not going to be able to understand it. Therefore, that was the second case I encountered. And that was the second case that I challenged. And I challenged that second case by staying on. I stayed on, I worked, I continued my travels, I continued my research, setting up one of the most influential think tanks in the Northeast, which went deeper into the complexities of the Northeast. We started studying the Northeast, and we started questioning how we were studying it. We started questioning the lenses that we look at the Northeast from. Now, what are these lenses? Anthropological, historical, sociological. Where have these lenses come from? Have they originated in India? Where have they originated from? These lenses are very well known to be colonial arms to fulfill colonial agendas. The greatest ethnographers, the greatest anthropologists that went into this region were British colonialists. They created these subjects that today we study from a foreign perspective, from an outsider's perspective. We don't have any subjects that we study to study ourselves. We have borrowed these subjects, and they came in with an agenda. They came in, with an idea that we are the outsiders. We are studying these natives. And these questions started arising in my mind, and like many scholars and researchers, these were the basis of our fieldwork. These were the basis of our education. But the more I got to know people, the more I got to know, my friends became like family in these areas. The more time I spent there, my gaze started to shift. My gaze started to shift because I started looking at things the way they look at things. It comes with time. Time is what you have to give in situations like this, in complex regions like this. I also started realizing that these lenses that we study these regions with concentrate on the differences. So when we're studying the Northeast, we say, that is different to what, we have. We don't study the similarities. Why do we do that? Because again, it's colonial lenses. It's an outsider lens, it's a foreign lens. They had a different motive to create these subjects. These subjects are not made by us. So obviously the lenses are different. And I started then thinking about, where does that place us? Where does that place us in our civilizational context? I started studying this area focused on the similarities and not the differences. And my perspective started to change. This was not based on the regional perspective that we are taught to learn. South of India, north of India, northeast of India. The perspective became an insider perspective because I started looking at these areas from the point of view of the fact that these are civilizational bonds that we need to revisit. And I think that made me an insider. The regional perspective did not make me an insider because it made me question, where are we? What is it doing to us as one people, as one nation, if these are the differences that we are focusing on? Anyhow, I continued to do my research. I went further, and my fieldwork was very, very difficult. It took a lot of time. I spent years and years and years. But this had become my third gaze, and this had become my final gaze. And the third gaze and my final gaze was the most difficult to address, was the most difficult to challenge, was the most difficult to confront because it was my own gaze. You see, fieldwork is not very easy. Moving around in conflict areas, difficult areas is not very easy. It is backbreaking. These are not things that you can do just because you have passion. A lot of people said, oh, you went to the Northeast, you spent 15 years there, you've lived there for so many years, you must be very passionate about it. Don't be naive. You can't be passionate about going to places like this when you are interviewing some of the deadliest insurgent organizations, operatives in the country. Trust me, passion doesn't play a role. What plays a role is discipline, strength of mind, physical strength, the fact that you can trust the people who have set up these meetings for you, the fact that you can trust that you can be with these people day in and day out and understand their problems, their perspectives. I also seem to realize that out of all of this, what I gained was the fact that it encouraged people. It encouraged people to start looking at the Northeast, writing about the Northeast, they started traveling to the Northeast. And I did that again, I did that continuously, relentlessly. Let me tell you, when you are traveling in third-class possible transportations, you're living in dormitories and huts that are leaking, you are eating food that you've possibly never seen in your life, but you're eating that food because you don't want to offend your hosts. You are doing all of these things going beyond what you think your psychological barriers are. And that's what you need to do. This is an effort that everybody has to make to see and to explore areas in our country that we haven't, that we ourselves have alienated, that we ourselves have kept ourselves away from. We have to start exploring these areas so that we can, again, question what is our civilization bonds? What are these terminologies that we've been stuck with? What is the Western influence on our academia, on our intelligentsia? who are we in the larger scope of things? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves. And you may not be from the humanities background, you may not be at this point thinking that, oh, I'll never need to do field work, or I'll never need to do research. But tomorrow you're placed in a remote area. These are the tools that you will be using, and these are the areas that you will have to realize. You have to put your ego aside, accept the things that are useful to you, discard the things that are not. You have to let go, you have to absorb, and it is only when you start doing all of this and accepting this time, you will realize that you will unravel to unleash your full potential. And that, my friends, you can only do when you establish the challenged